The Arthur J. Schmitt Foundation is connecting with people who knew Arthur personally or felt the direct impact of his philanthropy, value systems, and leadership. Arthur J. Schmitt lived from 1893 to 1971, and he launched his foundation in 1941 from the profits earned by the manufacturing company he founded, now known as Amphenol, a global multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company. Arthur was an engineer prodigy, fully believing in the power of technology to change the world. And in 1941, while his company was doing very well, the world was not. The US was about to enter World War II, and the impact of unleashed technology with no regard to morality or humanity, and was having catastrophic effects. Arthur launched his foundation to respond to what he saw in the world at that time. Arthur said, and I quote, "The basic solution to the world's problems rests in sound leadership, predicated on ability, knowledge, and a sense of moral values." He also said, "The solutions to man-made problems depends on knowledge, character, and enlightened leadership." His foundation continues to this day, steeped in those same values on which he founded it, to empower academically talented young people to change the world for good. Today's interview is with Dr. Frank Splitt, who attended the academic institution that Arthur founded in 1943 called the Fournier Institute of Technology. While it's no longer in existence, the impact it had on its many graduates was profound. Frank, 90 years young, is a retired electrical engineer, telecom executive, former Northwestern University faculty fellow, a college and semi-pro baseball player, a published author, activist, husband, father, and great-grandfather who has lived and continues to live a life of purpose, passion, perseverance, and impact. Both a man of science and a man of sport, Frank's career has spanned multiple disciplines with notable accomplishments in engineering education, the study of Wisconsin lakes, as well as the study of softball and baseball diamonds. We are delighted that Frank can share his thoughts on the impact Arthur J. Schmitt has had on his journey. You attended the Fournier Institute of Technology after completing Wright Junior College in Chicago and playing baseball there. Tell us a little bit about what it was like going to school there and perhaps some of the values you learned or developed from being a student there.
Well, going to Fournier was like a life-changing event for me because I didn't see any way of being able to go to college. And it was by the good fortune that I had of being contacted for an interview by Father Hoffman, who was the president of the college at that time. And so after the interview, I was on my way to college for the last 2 years. Well, there was a lot at stake. I had just given up signing a contract with the Chicago White Sox, so a lot was at stake for me to make the most of this. So there was the biggest thing that happened to me going to Fournier was an attitude adjustment, just like Cool Hand Luke had to change his attitude. I got very, very serious about studying. And, I was put amongst a lot of very smart individuals. My best friend, Dick Carcello, and who got the scholarship along with me, and the 10 other fellas that made up a class of 12 for the Fournier class of 1952. So the impact was absolutely profound. I would not have been able to do what I've done in my life without that formation that I received at Fournier. So what more can I say about that? It was just powerful.
It sounds like it had a huge impact. And it sounds like, did you know you wanted to be an engineer before you got there? Or did it validate your abilities and your progress?
Well, what I wanted to be, if anything, I wanted to be a chemist, a chemical engineer. I lost the scholarship to Loyola by 1 point after high school, and that was very sad. And it was that Wright Junior College that provided me an opportunity, and it's Dick Carcello as well. We were very close friends to be able to go to college and start our studies. And I just got fascinated with mathematics, inspired by a Wright professor by the name of Theodore Sanko. And I loved that. I loved baseball. I wanted to be a professional baseball pitcher. And so that's how things started. And Fournier was just the thing that launched me in a different direction. I didn't want to be an electrical engineer. That's what the scholarship was. So Dick and I had to go to Illinois Institute of Technology and catch up on statics and fundamentals of electrical engineering before we could even get into the class, which was that fall. So that summer was a very, very intense summer, you might say.
And then you went on to become an electrical engineer, and you went on to be a leader within the field of engineering. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the positions you had in your role as an engineer?
Okay, I started as a junior engineer at the Admiral Corporation, and then that's where I was really learning, the first couple of years. Then I went on to the Raytheon Manufacturing and was involved with the design and of the, from the tuner, I was responsible for the signal coming into the antenna all the way to the video amplifiers and the synchronization circuits. And, I had tears in my eyes when we were watching the first TV broadcasts out of Chicago. Uh, so anyway, that started it, and then I went on because this company was sold to the Raytheon Corporation. I went on to the Cook Research Labs, and I got pretty good at secure communications. That whole field. My idol at the time was Claude Shannon, the father of information theory, and I really dug into that. Loved the mathematics. It was crazy how I became like a mathematical person in statistical communication theory. And so that was recognized by the National Security Agency, by the Air Force, the Navy, and so on. And so they sent me to special school up at the University of Michigan to study random processes. Did that, and I was getting a reputation, and a sequence of projects kept coming in. And I can't see, I have to emphasize the ability to communicate and to use the written word, and as well as to be able to communicate verbally, makes a big difference. And that's what you have to emphasize with all of the new scholars coming out of the foundation with their support. Communications did it for me. People recognized I was able to write successful proposals and so on. And so then one day I got a question from the person who was the chairman, or not chairman, but the head of the particular division I was in, the technological division. And he says, Frank, how would you like to be the director of engineering? And I says, well, I don't know. He said, I asked him how long I had to make up my mind. He looked at his watch. It was a couple minutes. So then I got into management, but I kept writing technical papers. I was reviewing for the IEEE, specializations on information theory and in communication systems. So there I was launched into management. And so you ask where the roots of that were. And I keep going back to baseball. As I just thought of it, it started when I was the captain of the Herald American Carriers softball team. And I think I was 14 years old or so. We came back from a vacation in Wisconsin so I could play in this big last championship game at Dillon Stadium in Chicago, and we lost the darn game. I thought it was the end of the world, believe me. And that's something that you learn from baseball. You got to come back after you lose, and so on. So another question?
You've intersected these things in your life of the technical work, the math and the technical science that you didn't even know how good you were until you started to evolve, and then you overlap that with some management lessons. And all along the way, it sounds like the lessons from sport about resiliency and winning and losing you also incorporated that. I'm interested, you also mentioned that you were the inaugural advisory committee member for the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology, ABIT, and you had described yourself earlier as working to incorporate ethical and environmental considerations to update the accreditation criteria. I'm curious how all of these things have, how they started, you know, these concerns about ethics, management, communication, math, and even the leadership lessons from sport. When you were, you know, young Frank, and you didn't get that Loyola scholarship, could you have ever imagined how far all of these other elements would have intersected to accomplish all these things that you have done so far?
You know, that's a nice observation, but let me say, taking you back a few years back into my high school years, I was involved with Dick Carcello and his cousin, Bob Carcello, who was the link because he was at Fournier and told us about their expansion they were thinking of bringing somebody from community colleges. We were in a Catholic action group at St. Philomena Parish. And it was my task to sort of not convert, but to show a good example to the other fellows that hung around the grocery store, you might say, a kitty corner from the church, and to show a good example. They were people where I formed this softball team, the Lobo softball team, from my fellow Herald American Carriers when we were still kids. And then now this older group of fellows, we formed the Lobo team, which went on to win the state softball 16-inch softball championship in 1955. My God, is that a long time ago? But at that time, I listened to Fulton Sheen, Bishop Fulton Sheen on the TV. He was on Sunday afternoons, and I was getting impregnated with these kinds of ideas. And at Fournier, Father Lynch had a course of ethics. He taught us ethics there, and I got exposed to the executive order by FDR. I think it was 1966, where they put the the Japanese into internment camps. I just thought that was not right. It was not fair, and I wrote this paper on it. It was probably we had to do papers, so that was it. That's a way of expressing your thoughts and so on. And so that launched me into that. It was sort of like developing a real deep sense of empathy for others. You never know. Things come in various different ways, and they do get into you. And
well, yeah. And it sounded like too that you used your voice and your communication skills, not just to write the paper, but to have your concerns stated in a public setting, to say, I want people to know that Frank Splitt is not supportive of what's going on, trying to make a difference in that situation.
And that started a trail in my life that goes on to this day.
Tell us a little bit about that. I know you're a member of the Drake Group. Some of the listeners may not know what that is, but it sounds like it's also something where your love of sport, your ability to communicate, and your concern for others, your empathy for others, has allowed you to participate in this organization. Tell us about what you do or have done with the Drake Group.
Well, the Drake Group really came out of how I got involved with it was because of a brief that I wrote. And the brief was entitled Reclaiming Academic Primacy in Higher Education. And I had the back end of that brief had something to do with what I was doing in engineering education. And so what happened is that came to the attention of John Erickson, who was he was a chancellor at Drake, as a provost, and he was fighting for integrity in college athletics. And he asked me to join the Drake group after he saw me write that, that paper, which was forwarded by Father Hesper. And my wife Judy and I had a great day with Father Hesberg at Notre Dame, and that was in December, I think, of 2002, something like it was back when. So anyway, I start writing, and I'll tell you, I had such a zest for writing and finding out what was going on that was good and what was going on that was not so good. And my writing was picked up by the Daily Herald and my letters there. And then one thing led to another. I cannot believe I was writing papers like almost one a week. I just start writing a lot of papers, and then I came to know Alan Sack. He played on Notre Dame's football championship team. I believe it was 1966. And coincidentally, he played with my son-in-law's father, George Rassis. His dad played on that same Notre Dame team. My daughter goes to those big games, and she's met Alan. But Alan wrote a book called Counterfeit Athletes. Or counter, yeah, well, that was what it was. I didn't have it right here, but it's behind me someplace. But he asked me to write a book review. So I read the book, wrote the book review. That launched a whole series of book reviews that I did for Amazon. And so that sharpened up my wit and made me really pay attention. And that's one of the things that you recommend to others that may follow me is that you pick something that you're interested in and you like to do, and don't be worried about the consequences, because there will be not good consequences when you stick your neck out. And that was Machiavelli that said there's nothing more dangerous or doubtful of success than trying to change the order of things. That's what I've been doing, changing the order of things, or at least trying to. Well, anyway, Alan, liked my review, and he was one of my great backers within the Drake group, and they published all of my stuff, put it up on the internet, and so they were making me famous in a way, under, not famous enough. Well, actually, well known, except that nobody wants somebody like me to give a commencement address at a university that's sponsoring a big time college football and basketball program. So that's how life
What do you
was.
what do you see as, you've been an advocate for improving the integrity of sport within higher ed. There's been lots of change, and there's this. You're certainly part of a wave of people who are part of that effort. What do you think? What will sports look like and higher ed look like, if your vision of an improved balance between the two? What would it look like in the future if you could envision it?
Well, I don't think that they would be as professional as they are today, because they have to focus in order to win. See, winning is everything. And like Ernie Lombardi said, for the Green Bay Packers. And so it's not going to be as good. You're going to see, but I don't know that it's ever going to happen, because there will be a tiering, you might say, where the top tier are the Alabamas, the Auburns, and so on. Was it Clemson? And I have good friends at these schools, and they're put in a position that they have to go along with the program or else be ostracized. And I'll tell you what. If you ever look up the Drake Group fellows, or I don't know what they call it, what we got, I've got some kind of award from the from the Drake Group, but all of us have had to suffer because of sticking up for integrity in college sports. So the venues in the future, if you get really good integrity in terms of your programs and so on, the teams won't be as good as they are, but are today. But there will be, lower Division III teams which still do some kind of cheating, but they are not as gross as the top teams today. And that includes Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I've had, my discussions with Father Hesburgh back in the day. They do the best that they can, but they can't control these athletes all the time. So.
Well, it sounds like even your own personal story of losing at the age of 14, there's a lot of learning that comes with losing and winning. But if winning becomes the only thing, like you were suggesting with Vincent Lombardi, you undermine the opportunity for the personal growth that college is. Its whole mission is to be about that personal growth that you shared when you were at Wright Junior College and when you were at Fournier. And so if that comes out of balance, it sounds like
I
you're
think
saying
Northwestern tries to do the best they can. Can you hold on a second? I got somebody at the door that needs something. Thank you. I'll be right back. I'm in the middle of my interview.
Oh, I'm sorry, honey.
Hey, notice that looks like you're Hawaiian. Enjoy. I'm back. You can't deny that was my the lady across the street who's my editor.
oh,
And I had a copy of Yellowstone, the third season. I don't know if you've watched that.
No.
It's a barn burner. I'll tell you what.
We all need those during COVID, don't we?
Pardon?
We all need those kinds of shows during COVID, don't we?
Yeah. So anyway, she's has edited a number of my later things, and she is just a great lady, and makes blueberry muffins for my wife.
Oh, how lovely. How lovely.
Yeah. So where were we on this?
Well, we were talking about sport and the Drake group. And one of the things I just wanted to follow up on, you mentioned you were a pitcher. Talk to me a little bit about why a pitcher and how that metaphorically plays out in your life.
Okay, well, you got the ball, you got control of the game. And so it's a great responsibility. And I have to tell you, I just had a dream again about pitching. I don't know why these dreams come back, and it's got to do with there's a certain physics about pitching a baseball. It's the spin that you've got to put on it, so you have to really study that and be able to develop the muscle memory there in terms of your pitches and selection of pitches. But the game rests in your hands, so it's you're the guy that controls the game. And in leadership, if you're one of the top leaders, you've got to control the game. And so I got used to that. I got confidence by becoming a winning pitcher, and it gives you a lot of confidence to be able to tackle things, and that seem impossible.
Tell us a little bit more about those concepts of leadership that you developed, and what are some of the key elements to quality leadership?
Well, communications, relationships with people. People have to trust you, that you've got integrity, and so on. You got to be able to listen to all the people. You can't, if you try to be a dictator, that is not going to work. You'll find people leaving to go to better places, but people seem to like me, and for what I was able to do. One of the things I did, and probably can be misread. Normally, a lot of times bosses used to, you design something, you get a patent, and you got your name on it. And what I tried to do was to, if anybody had anything to do with it, I put them on the list as a co-inventor. And that developed a lot of goodwill, good feeling. But but the way it's read by other people, some other people, not all, is that he is the other guys did it and he put his name on it. You see.
As
Sometimes
opposed to sharing the glory and sharing the work,
it goes the
the
other way.
recognition of the work.
And sometimes that happens when you were writing a paper, a technical paper. I didn't get into too much of that because usually my papers were all solos. But the patents was where I was able to get my workers in design and drafting and so on to be able to get their name up there. And I was thinking about that the other day. This upcoming interview made me think about a lot of things, believe me. And that was one of them.
What do you think are the key ingredients to being an excellent engineer?
Excellent engineer. Know your stuff. For me, it was knowing mathematics and the statistical mathematics that was required in the kind of work that I did. But innovation was another thing. I had these thoughts. One time our production line was shut down because of a fire hazard with one of our protection devices, and it was with all products in that area across the nation, other manufacturers as well. I did not sleep for 2 nights. I was at my office and I designed a system. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. Our president did not want us to patent it because other people would see how to do it and why we did it that way. But it was one of the biggest thing I ever did. The production line started up again and we became the top producer of central office protectors in the United States. Even Bell Labs had to follow us. So anyway, that was something I was proud of, but never got really the kind of credit that you might have thought you would get for doing something like that. So
it sounds like perseverance certainly is a big part of your
never letting go of a problem. It's no matter how tired you are and whatever. I probably took naps while I was at work at that time, but yeah, I had to bring my shaving equipment to work too. So
yeah,
because of that kind of thing. So
yeah,
you just focus on the problem and then you develop a reputation. All of these things, feed on each other. It's the connections that you have with other people, and it's the respect that you get from doing something fairly significant, saving jobs. Production workers were able to go back to work and so on. And the word gets around. So that one thing leaks and goes and fertilizes another thing. So that's it.
It sounds like you have not shied away from problems. You certainly have I don't know if it's courageousness or curiosity or desire to have impact. But it seems like when you see a problem, you don't sort of turn the other way and say, oh, what can I do about it? You actually ask yourself, what can I do about it? And what will I do about it? And then you challenge yourself to get involved and get something.
Yeah, that's sort of what happened. And it happens today when I read the Chronicle of Higher Ed or the Wall Street Journal or the National Catholic Reporter. I see things that I don't think that they're right. And I feel that I somehow am compelled to say something about it. It's hard to not do it. I don't know what that is. It's in my DNA or something, or it's developed over the years.
It's interesting, Frank. One of the things the foundation talks about when we work with our scholars is we talk about leadership. That's a big part of the requirement for all of our Schmitt scholars today to be involved in a leadership project. And one of the things we hope they'll take with them is that leadership is not just a one-time event, but that you make a pledge to be a leader your whole life. And that leadership is about when you see a problem, you lean into it, you don't turn away. And, you know, you weren't a Schmitt Scholar of the day today, but you certainly seem to live the values of the Schmitt Scholars that we talk with every day. And you amplify, you just represent that definition of pledging to leadership in all facets of your life. And it's interesting to me that you're not even sure where that came from, but I'm curious if some of it might have been shaped, certainly through sport, certainly through engineering, but I'm wondering even if when you were at the Fournier Institute, if some of those values were part of your experience there.
Well, leadership. One thing that happened when we were, sometimes you get forced into doing things that you were not comfortable with. And that was in our, let's see, Christmas show of that we put on from our class. Every class had to do something, but they picked me to be the MC of our junior Christmas show. I don't know if AJ was there or not, but I am telling you, that was some responsibility. And I don't know why they picked me to do that other than to force me to do something I wasn't comfortable with.
Which is
And
also a kind of a trait of leadership, is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
you got that one right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
certainly had to do that at the Fournier Institute. That's interesting. How many students were watching you be the MC?
Well, it was, I don't know if we had parents or some of the board was there or whatever, but at the time there probably were less than 100 students, but there was faculty and all of that. But it was just the idea of it that
Sure.
was, and the same thing with basketball. Basketball at Fournier, I only played in the junior year, my junior year, but I wasn't one of the 5 starters. I was fifth man, a guard, and I'll tell you, you talk about pressure, is taking the ball when you're facing a full court press, and that was pressure. And so you learn there are things that you're not quite as good as others are in it, and you have to bow to them and be humble about it. And so humility is also another thing. You know, you see a lot of people that they're bragging all the time about this or that and the other thing. It's the same as using my title. I don't know that I ever used the title because when you're at a university, they don't call you doctor or anything because they call you all Mr. this and Mr. that. But that was another thing. Other people just kind of like flashing that doctor this or doctor that and so on. So anyway, that's about the size of it.
Are there, you know, here we are in a global pandemic, or 2021, our country, our world has faced so many tremendous challenges this past year. And some of them have highlighted the weaknesses in our world, in education, in healthcare, in civil rights, just to name a few. You have benefited from the legacy and the philanthropy of Arthur J. Schmitt and his commitment to education. What advice can you give to our current and future Schmitt scholars who also want to make their world a better place and leave their legacy? You're a man who has already had this incredible legacy in your 90 years and done so much. Do you have some advice for the young Schmitt scholars today about how they can leave their mark as well?
Well, they look at the world. See, they've got to read a lot. I mean, that's how I have picked up an awful lot, reading, and then reading some more about all kinds of things. And I think there's lessons in even in novels that you read. In fact, my heritage, being half Polish, comes from reading and understanding Poland by James Michener, and I read that book just recently, and you know, you've got to become aware of what's going on, and the way you do that is by, to me, reading the Chronicle of Higher Ed, Wall Street Journal, National Catholic Reporter, et cetera. But I watch PBS NewsHour religiously, the Washington Week. If you don't get immersed and wet with what the problems are of the world, you'll never be able to address them. But there's something that you've got to either generate yourself or whatever. You got to love what you're doing. And some people just don't love to confront problems. They just want to shy away, turn away, let somebody else do it. And sometimes that means nobody else is going to do it if you don't do it. So, hey, that was the kind of thing that happened at Northwestern, and I was fighting there and for, integrity in sports. A lot of people, not the professors, I think every one of the professors was on my side, but the administration was not. And they terminated prematurely my position as a McCormick Faculty Fellow of Telecommunications. And one of the board members went to the president and he was, denied, and so I wrote about that in one of my papers that's in the reflection book. So yeah, when you're out doing things, you're not always gonna get the shiny prize at the end. There are gonna people that don't like what you're doing. It's upsetting change. That's what Machiavelli admonished people that are trying to change things. It's a dangerous type of thing. Bad things can happen. And
It reminds me of what John Lewis said about getting into good trouble. Integrity is a hard path, and sometimes it's an exhausting path and lonely, and sometimes you don't succeed. But the work that you've done and the work you continue to do sounds like what keeps you motivated, as well as your curiosity. You also mentioned when we were chatting earlier something about Joseph Campbell, and I wondered if you would share your thoughts about the role of bliss in your life.
Well, bliss, that's follow your bliss is what he has said, but it's another way of saying that you got to love what you do. It turns out that problem solving, even solving calculus problems that I did with Dick Carcello, trying to do all the problems or doing the problems in Granville, Smith and Longley, the calculus Bible at the time. It was fun for us. We'd like to do it. And solving some of these problems, no matter what, it was bringing a joy to me. I look forward to that, getting up early and writing and staying up late and writing and trying to balance that out with your family life. But it's, he says, follow your bliss. And that's what I have tried to do. You should find bliss in the kind of thing you're doing. It sounds weird when you have to confront people and make a point. But you feel good after you do it if you're successful, at least in getting the point across and structuring the problem, you might say. So.
One other question you have, we were talking about change and how difficult change can be for communities and individuals and groups. You had mentioned to me earlier that in 1966, you were invited by your local church in Arlington Heights to respond to the profound changes taking place within the Catholic Church as a result of Vatican II. Could you talk a little bit about how you took on a leadership role there and how you were dealing with tremendous change that was impacting the Catholic Church community at the time?
Wow, that takes me back. But it was in December of 1966 that Father Hughes, Ed Hughes, said, Frank, what do you think about forming a parish council? I said, well, what's that? And let me tell you, I went about finding out what a parish council could be. And so I got I got elected as the president of the first parish council. We picked certain people from the parish to get involved. And we were confronted with a situation. The newspaper, I think about a week before, had shown a picture of the new St. James Church. and they were going to build this church in the parking lot behind the old church and so on. And I said, well, I'm not going to be the president if we have to accept this. I got to stop this, and then let's see what the parish really needs besides more brick and mortar. And so we developed a plan, a parish center, which, I was coaching basketball at the time, co-coaching with another individual and one of the priests. And my wife at the time was involved with plays and putting on productions and so on. So we designed a parish center, and that was, you know, uh, met with resistance by people who didn't like the change, change being not doing what the cardinal wants us to do or whatever. So that had to be taken care of. And then part of that had to do with the school. The cardinal at the just a little bit later wanted to close our school. He says, we're losing too much money and it's not worth it and so on. So then I got to run that thing there is to confront the cardinal. I had great backup from financial people in our parish, as well as uh, the future of the church, as I saw, was in the young people that we could educate and so on. And so we were successful in that. And it was my chore to face the cardinal. We had a meeting downtown with him, and I just laid it out, and he let us do what we wanted to do. And
what lessons do you have for young people about when you're confronted, when you have to face something that's very difficult and scary, and you're facing an audience of resistance? What kind of mindset did you put yourself in, or what did you do to prepare yourself for that kind of challenge?
well, I'm on the baseball diamond, and I got the ball, and I'm in charge, and I've got confidence that I can do this. If you know your stuff and you've done all your homework, you should be able to do it, but you've got to have the confidence. I was not scared of confronting the cardinal at the time, and many people were, and it just happened. My pastor was so happy. He just became my best friend, believe me. And another thing, talking about credit, I had a town meeting when we're talking about our plans for saving St. James School, and I gave credit to a lot of people, but I didn't give credit when in my end of my talk to the people in the women's club. The next day I got a call from the pastor. He says, Frank, we're in trouble. I says, what? He says, I got a call. I says, we got to meet with these ladies. Let me tell you how it turned out. Because we were so on top of it, I think we washed over that. And the two women, the current president and the past president of the St. James Women's Club, became my best friends. So you can, what is it, make lemonade out of lemons or something. But anyway, it turned out, and it's still one of them, she's well into her 90s, well into them, past me. We still talk about the old days. And, so anyway.
That's a lovely story. I want to ask you one other thing. It's a quote of yours that I had read. You were the Midwest director or co-director of the Foundation for Global Community, where you work to build a world beyond war with a focus on the environment, education, energy, and economics, where I had read in your words, you said, you called for the creation of our common future and a new way of thinking, from me and mine and survival of the fittest to we and ours and survival of all of us together. I thought that was just such a lovely quote. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that meant to you and how you came to that concept and phraseology?
Well, that was a lot of this has got to do with my wife, Judy. Believe me, she was the one that asked me to go to a meeting of these people. They call it the Beyond War Foundation. And so I said, I don't understand that. I think it was just about the time I finished my PhD work, and in the mid 60s or so. And so I went to the meeting, and I said, give me 2 meetings and I'll show you that these are all communists from Stanford and Palo Alto. Turns out that these were the finest people I ever met in my life. They were just truly great people. One of them especially, Ed Kaiser, and his wife Barbara had moved to the Chicago area to get the Midwest Beyond War Foundation group going. And so Ed called me the great communicator after he got to know me, and he wanted me to take a look at some work that was done by Jonas Salk, and which I did. We had meetings offsite. I think we were at the at Cincinnati at the Dominican novitiate and whatever out there. Judy my wife was taught by the Dominican, so that was very comfortable setting. And I met some of the top people from the Beyond War Foundation from out in California. And so they talked to me a bit. And to me, I looked at that little talks as a challenge. And that's when I started thinking about writing, creating our common future. And I came up with that. One of the obstacles that we have is just that, people with rugged individualism, which applies to the COVID thing now. That's why, I did take that piece, and it was published by the Wall Street Journal and in the Atlantic magazine. So I was very proud of that. And going back almost 30 years to grab something that, that was applicable today. So
Still has relevance. Incredible how relevant it is. Yeah.
yes. So, I have to give credit to so many people that have influenced my life. They are just great technical professor, technical Edson Peck, Arnold Siegert and Mitt Matthews from the National Security Agency. I have met people, I've had mentors like Ed Ernst from the University of Illinois, then of South Carolina, that have asked me to follow in their footsteps, some of them, which I have. They're all passed away, but I've carried on their thoughts, their ambitions, projects, and so on. So life has been good to me. My daughter gave me a placard. It's a wonderful life. And I've got that hanging right over the doorway going out in our garage in our home up north. And by the way, the home up north was was from still. I was opposed in a way by Peter Wren, a board member, telling me I didn't need to build. He could get me into dairy mints. I could do all the fishing I wanted and so on, but it wasn't what my wife wanted. My wife liked the idea of a home up north. Her father was a muskie fisherman, and if you want to know about being laser focused, you could look at me as a muskie fisherman. It's in fact, I have behind me something that I got. I'm turning around. Can you see this?
Sure can. That's lovely.
That was a gift on my 90th birthday. A lot of people think of me as a fisherman, like Peter, that we were just fishermen. And so was Father Hespert when we were at, meeting with him when we were talking about his prelude or preface or forward to my first big paper. He showed me a lot of pictures of muskie. And then I asked him, I asked him if he knew Nick Rassis, because my daughter was marrying into the Rassis family. Nick Rassis is one of the famous Notre Dame players. He says, well, I sure do. Then we got off into details about family in sports and so on. So, but this.
Well, you have certainly, in addition to being a fisherman and laser focused in fishing, it certainly appears that those same persistence and problem solving approaches have been consistent across every element of your life, from the time you were a young man to present day. And as a benefactor from the Arthur J. Schmitt work and philanthropy, you are also just a wonderful example for all of our Schmitt scholars on how to carve a life, how to create a life that's well lived and focuses on problem solving and includes elements of creativity and curiosity and kindness and empathy and leadership that is extraordinary, Frank. And we are so delighted to be able to honor you through this sharing of your story, as well as provide you as an example for all of our Schmitt scholars, and how they, as they're launching their lives, just starting their lives as Schmitt scholars, that they will continue throughout their life to be a leader as you have been. We are tremendously grateful for all you have done.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll tell you, I just know that none of the things that I have done, my accomplishments and all, wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for Arthur J. Schmitt. So I'm not going to cry, but you're getting me close to it.
Well, and certainly you live a life of humility, as we all know is one of the most important elements of great leadership. And you certainly live that. I can even just share this. I don't know if you can see that, but this is our thank you to you. But this shows Frank and his beautiful sort of shared visual of him turning 90 and thanking others. Even at his 90th birthday, he's still thanking others. Another just great example of a beautiful leader.
Well,
anything else you want to share with us, Frank, before we close?
Well, what you just showed was something that was orchestrated by my daughter. That whole parade, I don't know how many cars went past, nuns from the parish and friends from all over, from Elgin, Illinois, from Tinley Park, Illinois. They all came and streamed past, all organized by my daughter and the police officer. And well, very close to me and so on. I just have to thank everybody who has participated in making me who I am. And you are now part of it, Carla. So.
Well, I'm honored to just get to know you a little bit and to hear your amazing story.
Yeah.
And the Arthur J. Schmitt Foundation is, I know the Arthur J. Schmitt Foundation has done good work when we see a life so well lived by someone like you. It was a great investment in you, and it has paid off decade after decade. So we're very, very grateful.
And I'm grateful also, I have to mention, I don't know that I have, of Bob Janowak, who was a good friend of Peter Wren's. In fact, Peter gave a eulogy at Bob's funeral. That card that I just showed you was from Bob's wife, Judy. You know, we had a network, and it included Dick Becker, who was the president of the Schmitt Foundation for a time. And he used to come, he heard me talk and so we, you know, we just had a great community of people. And I would hope that others who, you know, strive for leadership have this kind of backup and support as I have in life. I could not have done it by myself. So thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks for being here, and thanks for all of you who are lucky enough to hear Frank's story. This has been an interview with Dr. Frank Splitt from the Arthur J. Schmitt Foundation. Thanks for tuning in.
Amen.